My parents praised me for being the easy one, then gave my sister $75,000 and called me ungrateful for accepting a dress gift. After my sister's picture-perfect wedding, my future in-laws surprised me with a designer dress. I was floating on a cloud until my parents pulled me right back to earth, and not gently. They were furious. I'm Tessa, 27, and I've been engaged to my fiancé, Luke, who's 29, for about 8 months. We're planning to tie the knot this coming June, and I should be glowing with excitement. But instead, my heart's been carrying the weight of disappointment and confusion. Why? Because family drama has completely taken over what should be one of the happiest seasons of my life. Here's the background. I have one sister, Maya, who's now 30. She got married 3 years ago. And let me tell you, my parents, both 59, spared no expense for her big day. From the lavish venue to the custom floral arrangements, down to the extravagant honeymoon, they covered every last dime. That dream wedding cost them around $75,000. For context, my dad works in insurance, and my mom teaches at an elementary school. They're not rich, but they're stable. That price tag was a major stretch, but they never once hinted at money being tight. When Maya was picking her dress, they brought her to the most high-end boutique in the city. She walked out with a $6,000 couture gown. Everything was top tier, and honestly, it was beautiful. The wedding was stunning, everyone had a great time, and I remember feeling genuinely happy for her. But I also remember something else. After Maya's wedding, I sat down with my parents and asked, point blank, if they planned to do the same for me someday. I didn't want surprises. My mom smiled, squeezed my hand, and said, "Of course we will, sweetheart. We would never treat our daughters differently." That promise became something I held on to, something that mattered. Fast forward to now. Luke proposed last December, and wedding planning has been in full swing since. I've actually been extremely careful with spending. We booked a venue that's half the cost of Maya's. We trimmed the guest list, chose simpler decor, and have been watching every dollar. The one thing I truly hope to splurge on? My wedding dress. Just like Maya did. That's when everything started to unravel. Last month, Luke's parents, who are pretty well off and incredibly kind people, invited me out for a day of wedding dress shopping. They said it would be a fun bonding experience. I was genuinely touched. They've always treated me like family, and this felt like their way of welcoming me even deeper into their world. We spent the afternoon laughing, sipping champagne, and trying on gowns. And then I saw it, the dress. A breathtaking designer piece that made me feel radiant, like I was stepping into a dream. I twirled in front of the mirror, and for a moment, the world went quiet. It was that kind of dress. The price tag read $5,200, actually less than what Maya's gown cost 3 years ago. Then, right there in the boutique, Luke's parents pulled out their card and bought it for me as a gift. I was speechless, overwhelmed. I hugged them, nearly cried, and told them over and over how much it meant to me. It wasn't just a dress. It was a moment of feeling deeply seen and celebrated. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. I thought they'd be thrilled. I thought they'd be happy I found the perfect gown without it even costing them a dime. I was so wrong. That night, I shared the news with them over dinner, expecting smiles, maybe even a tear or two from my mom. Instead, I got silence, then sharp glances, then a tense shift in the mood that made my stomach twist. My mom looked irritated. My dad was downright angry. Not proud, not happy, angry. They said I was letting the wedding spiral into something over the top and unreasonable. I reminded them that I'd been careful with every other detail, that I'd chosen a more modest venue, that the guest list was smaller, that they had promised to give me the same treatment Maya received. And this dress? It wasn't even coming out of their pocket. That's when my mom dropped the bomb. They were only willing to contribute $15,000 toward my wedding. $15,000. That's 1/5 of what they spent on Maya's. And no explanation. Just vague mumbling about changing financial priorities and being more responsible than your sister. But here's the thing. Their finances haven't changed for the worse. If anything, they're doing better. My dad got a promotion last year. They just bought a cabin upstate. They've never mentioned struggling, not once. So what changed? I sat there stunned. Not just because of the money, but because the promise they made, the one I held close to my heart, was now being rewritten like it never mattered. After that night, everything between us started to feel brittle, like glass under pressure. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being cast as the problem child for simply expecting my parents to keep a promise. I tried to push forward with planning. I tried to focus on the joy, but the bitterness in their tone lingered, and I could tell it was only getting worse. Then came the family dinner that sent everything spiraling. It was supposed to be a casual Sunday get-together. Just a meal with extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles. But the tension walked into the room with my parents. As soon as the wedding came up in conversation, my mom made a passive-aggressive comment about some people needing to be more realistic with their wedding dreams. My dad followed up with a jab about not everyone having a taste for extravagance. The message was crystal clear. They were talking about me. And I'd had enough. I snapped. I looked them both in the eyes and said, if we're sticking to a strict budget now, maybe I should start by cutting out the two most judgmental guests from the list. Silence fell. You could hear silverware clink down. My mom's face crumpled, and she started crying. My dad, he stood up, said I was being cruel and disrespectful, and they both left the table without another word. Just like that. The fallout was immediate. Relatives started texting me afterward, clearly having been fed one side of the story. You should just be grateful. They're doing their best. Why are you trying to cause a rift over a dress? Even Maya, trying to stay in the middle, gently suggested I apologize to keep the peace. But I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. Because this wasn't just about the dress, or the budget, or the wedding. It was about being treated as less. Luke, bless his heart, never wavered. He told me I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't fair. His parents, still shocked by the backlash, offered to cover more of the wedding costs to ease the burden. But I hesitated, because deep down, I felt like if I accepted, I'd be proving my parents right, that I was spoiled, entitled, greedy. And I'm not. I just want to be seen and love the way they saw and love my sister. I felt torn. Do I accept the $15,000 and let it go? Or do I stand my ground and risk tearing the family even further apart? A few days passed, and I tried to let the dust settle. But the silence from my parents only made the weight heavier. I needed closure, or at least clarity, so I invited them over for coffee. No drama, just a quiet, private conversation. When they arrived, I started with something I knew I needed to say. I'm sorry for threatening to uninvite you. I was hurt, and I lashed out. That wasn't fair. They nodded, stiffly. With that cleared, I tried, once more, to explain where I was coming from. I told them this wasn't about the money. It was about the promise. The one they made when Maya got married. The one that made me feel like I mattered just as much. But they didn't budge. In fact, they doubled down. My mom said, Maya's wedding was different. She was the first. We wanted it to feel special. And when I asked, why can't mine be just as special? My dad responded, because you're more practical. You should know better than to spend so much on a one-day party. That's when the fog in my head finally cleared. This wasn't just about the wedding. It never was. This was a pattern, one that had been there my entire life. Maya had always been the emotional one, the dramatic one, the one who needed more, asked for more, demanded more. And she got it. While I was expected to be the easy one, the independent one, the one who didn't need coddling or attention. I hadn't even seen it until now, until the contrast was blinding. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just calmly said, I'm hurt, deeply, but I'm moving forward. I told them I'd be accepting Luke's parents' offer to help with the wedding, and that I'd be scaling back my own parents' role in the planning. Not out of spite, but because we clearly had two very different visions, and I couldn't keep chasing their approval. They left quietly. No fight. No epalegi. That night, I got a long, raw text from my mom. It hit like a punch to the chest. She said I was breaking her heart, that I was choosing money over family, and that I had always been difficult. That last part cut the deepest. She saw me as the problem. Not the broken promise, not the favoritism, not the emotional neglect. Just me. The next day, Maya called. She had apparently gotten an earful from them, too. And to my surprise, for the first time, she was on my side. I think you're right, she said. I didn't see it before, but they've always treated you differently. I'm sorry. She even offered to talk to them for me. But the most shocking moment came a day later. Luke's mom called. She was hesitant, careful with her words, but she said something that made my stomach drop. Before our dress shopping trip, she had reached out to my mom, just to coordinate. She assumed my parents were involved, like they had been for Maya. And you know what my mom said? We're letting Tessa figure things out on her own this time. She needs to learn how to be financially responsible. That was weeks before I ever brought up the budget. They never intended to help the way they had before. They were rewriting the rules just for me, and I had no idea. That's when I stopped trying to make sense of it. The truth was clear now. I wasn't imagining the favoritism, and I wasn't wrong to feel hurt. It's wild how much clarity you can find when you start looking backward with open eyes. One of the commenters on my post suggested I go through old family photos and home videos. At first, I brushed it off. What good would that do? But something about it tugged at me. So I spent a weekend diving into boxes of photo albums and watching grainy birthday party footage on my laptop. And suddenly, everything I'd been feeling wasn't just a suspicion. It was proof. There was Maya front and center at every birthday, her pile of gifts always towering over mine. Vacation photos where our itineraries clearly revolved around her likes, her favorite beaches, her preferred restaurants, while I was always just smiling politely in the background. And in the videos, it was so obvious. She could cry, yell, throw tantrums, and the response was always comfort, concern, attention. Me, I was the good one, the patient one, the one who got praised for not making a fuss. But no one ever asked me how I felt. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat there, holding a photo of 8-year-old me next to Maya's mountain of birthday presents, and whispered, "I see you now." Armed with this new lens, I decided to try again, one last talk with my parents. I chose a neutral location, a quiet cafe, and brought a small photo album I had put together. Not to accuse them, but to show them, to help them see what I had finally seen. I opened the album across the table and said, "I'm not trying to rewrite history. I just want you to see it from my side." They barely glanced at the pictures. My dad leaned back, arms crossed. "You're cherry-picking moments. That's not the full story." My mom started crying, again, but not in the way that invites comfort. This time, she said, "How can you twist our love for you into something so ugly?" We did our best. I tried to explain, this wasn't about love. I knew they loved me, but love isn't the same as fairness, or effort, or showing up equally. They didn't want to hear it. They stood up, walked out. Again, that night, 2 texts came in. My dad's was cold and clipped. "We'll stick to the $15,000. But we're not going to be emotionally blackmailed into giving more." My mom's? Long, raw, and angry. "You've always been jealous of your sister. This needs to stop. Grow up." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. But the universe has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. The next day, Maya showed up at my door. No warning. Just her and an envelope. A check for $30,000. "It's not about the money," she said, her voice shaky. "It's about finally seeing what you've been living through all these years and trying to make it right." I tried to refuse, but she pushed the envelope into my hands. "They gave me money last year for a down payment. I didn't even realize they hadn't done the same for you. This isn't charity. It's me stepping up as your sister." We talked for hours. For once, no tension, just truth. It was the first time I felt like she truly saw me, and that mattered more than the check ever could. After that talk with Maya, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not total, not permanent, but enough to breathe again. With the money she gifted and Luke's family continuing to be incredibly supportive, we were able to move forward with the wedding exactly how we wanted it. We locked in a beautiful venue that felt like us. I finalized the dress alterations, and little by little, the pieces started falling into place. For a moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could finally enjoy being a bride. But of course, the storm hadn't passed completely. My parents found out about the check from Maya. And when I say they lost it, I mean full meltdown. They accused her of taking sides, of rewarding bad behavior, and of being manipulated by jealousy. Maya, to her credit, didn't flinch. She told them plainly, "I'm not taking sides. I'm owning my part in this. And for once, I'm showing up for my sister." That only made them angrier. Then came the threat. "If you keep enabling her, we might just pull our contribution altogether." Their $15,000, something they'd already made feel like a reluctant handout, was now a bargaining chip, a punishment tool. And honestly, I didn't even care anymore. The money wasn't the point. It was never the point. What hurt the most was how determined they were to paint me as the villain in this story. They were so invested in preserving their version of reality that they couldn't see how deeply they'd wounded me, or how hard I was still trying to make space for them in this new chapter of my life. Extended family members, clearly fed one side of the story, started calling me, texting me, telling me to fix things before it's too late. As if I hadn't been trying. As if keeping the peace hadn't cost me enough already. Luke's mom stepped in more during this time, quietly taking over some of the responsibilities that traditionally would have fallen to my mother. She did it with so much grace and kindness that I cried the first time she helped me finalize the seating chart. We made the decision to move ahead as if the $15,000 didn't exist. I'd still accept it, but we wouldn't depend on it. And emotionally, I was done begging for them to show up as parents. One decision I struggled with was whether or not to have my dad walk me down the aisle. Tradition said yes. My heart wasn't so sure. After a lot of thinking, I landed somewhere in the middle. Yes, I would still ask him to walk me down. But the father of the bride's speech? That moment would belong to someone who had truly stood by me, my uncle. He had been there, quietly supportive, without judgment the entire time. My parents didn't know about this change yet, but I was preparing for another blow-up when they found out. And Maya? She was stepping up in every way. She accepted the role of maid of honor with a kind of quiet fierceness I hadn't seen from her before. She went to appointments with me, helped with invitations, and coordinated with vendors like a pro. We were healing, truly, slowly, but beautifully. And even though things with my parents were tense, maybe even fractured, I had something now I hadn't had before. Support where it counted. A few weeks passed, and things were quiet, unnaturally quiet. Then, out of the blue, my mom reached out and asked if we could meet for coffee. Alone. No context, no drama in her voice. Just, can we talk? I hesitated. After everything, part of me wanted to ignore the message. But I went. Hope is a stubborn thing. She showed up looking tired, worn in a way I hadn't seen before. And to my surprise, she wasn't defensive. Not at first. She admitted something I honestly didn't expect to hear. After talking with a few friends, she said, I started to wonder if maybe I wasn't being entirely fair. She didn't outright acknowledge the favoritism, but she did own one thing, breaking the promise. We told you we'd treat your wedding the same. We didn't. I'm sorry for that. For the first time in months, I felt something shift. Just slightly. Just enough. She told me they would honor the original commitment. They'd match Maya's wedding budget after all. I was cautious, guarded, but I thanked her. And deep down, I wanted to believe it was the beginning of a new chapter. But peace doesn't last long in a house built on shaky ground. When my dad found out about our conversation, all hell broke loose. According to Maya, who overheard the argument, he accused my mom of being manipulated, of caving to guilt, and of letting Tessa control the family. He was furious. He saw her apology not as progress, but betrayal. The fallout was bigger than I expected. My parents, married for over 30 years, were now in crisis. Real crisis. My mom called me in tears a few days later. She told me my dad had temporarily moved into their vacation cabin, that they'd been fighting nonstop, that he wasn't just upset about the money. He was unraveling old resentments, buried anger, things that had nothing to do with me or the wedding. She said, I don't think this is about you anymore, honey. I think this just brought everything to the surface. I sat there stunned. My wedding had become a match that lit a fire under decades of unresolved tension. And yet, Maya, once the golden child, now my greatest ally, assured me that none of this was my fault. You didn't cause it, she said. You just stopped pretending everything was fine. Then came the most surprising moment of all. My dad reached out. He asked to meet, just the two of us. We hadn't spoken one-on-one in weeks, maybe months, without it ending in a fight. And what happened next still echoes in my chest. He was vulnerable. He told me the budget battle wasn't really about money, that it was about something he couldn't admit until now. I always felt like Olivia needed me, he said, using Maya's former name. You didn't. You were self-sufficient, strong, independent, and I guess that made me feel replaceable. Then he added something I'll never forget. Watching Luke's parents take over made me feel like I didn't matter anymore, like he didn't need me, and that scared me. In that moment, I saw a different kind of pain, not an excuse, but a window. I told him I'd always needed him. I just learned early not to ask too much, not to be a burden. That being the easy child didn't mean I didn't feel the same things Maya did. I just kept them quieter. He cried. I cried. It didn't solve everything. But it was the first time in a long time that we saw each other, not as roles, but as people. After that talk with my dad, something shifted, not all at once, but slowly, like ice thawing under spring light. He didn't promise anything about the money. In fact, he said he still needed time to think about what they could or should contribute financially. But for once, it didn't feel like a transaction. It felt like a father trying to rebuild something real. What mattered more to me was when he said, no matter what we give, I want to be there. I want to be part of it in a way that means something to you. That cracked me open. I told him I still wanted him to walk me down the aisle. I always had. And no amount of disappointment could erase the fact that I still wanted him there for that moment. That tradition. We didn't hug. Not right then. But we sat in that shared understanding like it was enough. For now. Meanwhile, Maya, bless her heart, was rising like someone who had just remembered who she was. She was helping me plan, calling vendors, helping me field the endless questions from extended family who were still confused about the drama. She even came with me to every remaining bridal appointment. She was steady, fierce, loyal. I told her, half joking, that I felt like I finally had the sister I always wanted. She smiled, then said something that hit me hard. Maybe you always had her. She just needed to wake up. And then there was Luke. Through all of this chaos, months of tears, tense family dinners, emotional whiplash, he remained my constant. Never once did he complain about the drama that had hijacked our wedding. Never once made me feel like a burden. He just listened, held me, stood beside me like he'd already made the vow. His parents, too, continued to show up with grace and kindness, not overstepping, just being there in ways that filled in the emotional gaps my own parents left behind. It was healing to be seen and supported without strings attached. With 3 months to go until the big day, most of the major pieces were in place. Venue locked, dress perfectly altered, guest list finalized. And while things with my parents weren't perfect, we were finally speaking again. Not avoiding, not pretending, just speaking, raw, hesitant but real. They'd also started seeing a marriage counselor. Apparently, the budget disagreement had unearthed far more than just sibling favoritism. According to Maya, who'd stayed closer to the situation than I had, our parents were finally being forced to confront how their dynamic had affected not just me, but each other. That part surprised me. I'd always seen them as a unit, a team, but maybe they were just two people who'd built a house on uneven ground, patching the cracks until one finally split too deep to ignore. It felt heavy, sure, but it also felt like maybe, just maybe, this wedding wasn't the end of anything. Maybe it was the beginning. It's been nearly a month since the wedding, and every time I try to sit down and describe it, I find myself overwhelmed by everything it meant. Not just the celebration, but the healing that quietly unfolded beneath it. The day itself was perfect, not in the glossy magazine kind of way, but in the deeply personal, quietly magical kind of way. The weather was golden, soft, like it was wrapping us in a blessing. The venue looked beautiful, simple, but full of warmth and meaning. Every corner held a memory in the making. And the people who showed up, they showed up with full hearts. My dad walked me down the aisle, just as I'd always imagined. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel distant or guarded. He was present. I glanced up at him as we approached the altar, and his eyes were filled with tears. When we reached Luke, my dad gently kissed my forehead and whispered, "I'm proud of you." During the reception, he gave a speech, one I wasn't sure would ever happen, and it left the entire room silent. He said, "I haven't always been the father Tessa deserved. I let my fears, my pride, and my assumptions get in the way of seeing her clearly. But today, I see her, and I want to do better starting now." There wasn't a dry eye in the room, not even mine. And then came a moment I hadn't planned at all. A slow dance with my mom. We hadn't scheduled it. It wasn't choreographed or even expected. But as the music played, she came up to me quietly and asked, "Can I have a moment with my daughter?" We danced. And in the middle of that soft, swaying moment, she leaned in and whispered, "You've taught me so much. About fairness. About courage. About standing up for yourself. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I didn't show it sooner." That single sentence rewrote years of silence. Then came Maya's speech. Maid of honor, sister, and now, finally, friend. She spoke with emotion I never knew she carried. Tessa has always been the rock in this family, and I didn't see it. Not until recently. I was the loud one, the needy one, and she was the one who quietly held it all together. Today, I stand beside her not just as her sister, but as someone who finally understands just how much she's carried, and how gracefully she's carried it. And then she pulled out one last surprise. A honeymoon upgrade, planned, paid for, and wrapped in a handwritten note that read, "Consider this the final step in balancing the scales." The room erupted into cheers. Luke's parents, too, were glowing. His mom told me, just before we left the night, "I hope you always feel as loved and supported as you do today." That's all any mother wants for her daughter. And in that moment, I finally felt what I'd been chasing all along. Not perfection, not symmetry, but peace. A sense that I was loved for who I was, not for how little I asked for. Now that the vows have been exchanged, the photos developed, and the confetti swept up, life is starting to settle. But something inside me has shifted forever. In the weeks after the wedding, I found myself reflecting, not on the flowers or the music or even the dress, but on everything that changed in the spaces between. The uncomfortable conversations, the tearful revelations, the broken patterns, the unexpected healing. My relationship with Maya is something I never thought I'd get to experience. We're still learning how to be close in a real, honest way, but she's been consistent, showing up for weekly lunch dates, helping me write thank you cards, even planning a little spa day for us just to unwind. There's a lightness between us now. No tension, just love. Real, complicated, hard-won love. And my parents? They're trying. We've started meeting once a month just to talk. No pressure, no expectations. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it's warm. But it's happening. They even started therapy together after the wedding. According to Maya, the counselor is helping them confront long-held dynamics. Not just favoritism, but resentment, disappointment, and how much of their relationship had been built on unspoken assumptions. It's not easy for them, but I can see the effort. And effort means more to me than perfection ever could. My dad and I have this new thing we do now, Adventure Days. Once a month, we try something neither of us has done before. Kayaking, archery, a cooking class. We're not always good at it, but that's not the point. The point is we're learning how to just be together without all the roles and expectations weighing us down. My mom and I are taking it slower. We talk more often now, but it's cautious. She's still learning how to see me beyond the boxes she placed me in. But she's trying. She's asked questions she never did before. She even joined me and Maya for lunch last week. And for the first time in years, we laughed. Together, without tension hiding in the silence. Luke and I spent our honeymoon somewhere breathtaking, thanks to Maya's gift. But the most meaningful part of that trip wasn't the scenery, it was the clarity. The long walks, the quiet talks, the shared dreams. We spent hours discussing what kind of parents we want to be someday. How we'll divide emotional labor. How we'll make sure our children feel equally loved. Not just told they are, but shown. Because this journey taught me something I'll never forget. Fairness is not a formula. It's a practice. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in silence. But silence can feel like abandonment when it's not balanced by presence. And sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't drive people away. It calls them closer. Eventually, since coming home, I've been writing down pieces of this story. Not for revenge or validation, but so I don't forget. So when I look back years from now, I remember exactly what it took to break the cycle. This wedding started as a celebration of love between two people. But in the end, it became something much bigger. A reckoning, a restoration, a reset button on how my family shows up, for me, and for each other. To anyone else walking through something like this, navigating favoritism, broken promises, or the quiet ache of being overlooked, I want to say this. You are not wrong to want to be seen. You are not difficult for expecting fairness. You're not selfish for standing your ground. Because sometimes, shaking the tree is the only way to see which roots were real all along. Our wedding wasn't just beautiful. It was a turning point. Not just for me, but for my whole family. And now, as I step into this new chapter of my life, I carry not just the love of my husband, but a deeper, clearer love for myself. One I had to fight for, but one I now know I deserve. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.